when you're drawing, you're a samurai with a katana, You have to think of how to convey authenticity and authority and talent and vision. Be aware of the circumstances that are affecting your career. Be aware of the circumstances that are affecting your family life.
Hello, Architect Nation, and welcome back to the Business of Architecture podcast. Super excited about we have an awesome interview for you today, but before we jump into that interview, I want to remind you, if you haven't already checked out our Smart Practice Method training, go over and check that out at smartpracticemethod.com. That'll keep you from sacrificing your life, your family, and your health in the pursuit of doing excellent work, which is going to be one of the topics of our conversation today.
And now a word from today's sponsor. A while ago, I began to hear reports of a company that was helping some of our clients build remote teams. We looked into it more closely and discovered the company World Teams that was helping small architectural practitioners build remote teams that were both capable and qualified. I was intrigued by another business that are addressing one of the critical pain points for small architectural practices, which is the ability to grow and shrink a team effectively, to be able to handle higher workflow without having to staff up significantly and also being very sensitive about labor costs. World Teams is built to address these issues. World Teams is a small but mighty company that helps architectural practices build high-performing remote teams quickly and efficiently, saving you the headache of sorting resumes and interviewing underqualified candidates. World Teams operates in your time zone and prioritizes near-native English speakers, ensuring clear and efficient communication with your remote team members. They have flexible contracts so you can adjust your team size as your needs evolve. Additionally, you're connected directly with your skilled professionals, which fosters trust and collaboration. And World Teams helps you reduce your operating costs without compromising the quality that is so important to a practice. To download a free guide for building a remote team for a small architectural practice, go to businessafarchitecture.com/world teams. That's one word, businessafarchitecture.com/world teams. As a reminder, sponsorship is not an endorsement, and you must do your own due diligence before entering into any business relationship. Go to businessafarchitecture.com/world teams.
We are looking for architect developer stories for the Business of Architecture podcast. So, are you an architect developer with valuable insights to share? We're always on the lookout for passionate voices in the industry to join us on the Business of Architecture podcast. If you're ready to share your journey, lessons, strategies with our global audience, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us to explore being a guest on our show and help inspire other architect developers on their path. We'd be interested in hearing your story, whether you're at the very beginning of your development story or whether you have $100 million portfolio of projects already in the bag completed. We'd like to hear from you if you're working with the developers or that you've developed a number of small houses or you're working at a larger scale.
Today, we're joined by Marcus Gleysteen, and Marcus runs Marcus Gleysteen Architects based out of Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm excited to speak with Marcus because he could easily rub shoulders with the top residential architects in America and the world with the caliber of work their office is doing. And so he has a expansive and very impressive portfolio of work they're doing. And he's here to have a real conversation with us about what it takes to run a practice and what sacrifices look like and some of the things that he did and how that impacted himself and just learning from everything he has to share. So Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Was happy to be here.
Yeah. You and I, we met back at the CRAN conference. It was several months ago and in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You heard me speak and then we hit it off and we got to go on this excellent house tour of Seattle, saw some really cool houses up there. But during that, right after my speech, you kind of came up to me and you said, Enoch, I feel like I'm a poster child for what you had talked about.
That's true.
Yeah. So before we jump into it, give me a bit of, if you would, give me a bit of context around your practice. So how many full-time team members do you have? Give us an idea of the size.
Right now we're there. It's 7 of us right now. We range in size from 6 to 12, depending on how busy we are. But we do that naturally. And we have been focusing on single family houses primarily for the last almost 30 years.
Okay. And typically, what kind of revenue is your company bringing in on a yearly basis? I'm sure it fluctuates, but what do you say it
Well,
is?
if somewhere 1.5 to 3 million. I mean, a gross on a gross level. It depends on a lot of factors, and right now we're a little bit smaller than we've been, but we're sort of waiting for normalcy to return. Of course, interest rates have a big impact on residential architecture, no matter what income level people are talking about. Most of our clients are high net worth individuals, and I hate to use that term, but they still look at the circumstances that are, guiding their financial decisions. But we're doing really well. We're really happy with the commissions that we get. They allow us to be very creative, and we can explore a lot of interesting ideas and uses of materials, and it allows us to keep current on all the latest developments in relation to climate change, and now on the outside, what's happening with AI and its impact on our profession.
Yeah. And so, like 1.5 million to 3 million, and a $3 million year for you, is that a really good year, or is that kind of like we're
That's a
pulling our
really
hair out?
No, that's a really good year.
Okay.
And but the the way we run our firm, we're sort of a studio, and I've done some PSMJ stuff like boot camp. I'm a poster child for what one should never be. I'm like an art driven practice that puts design over revenue. And
And
you
you
also
about it, which I
yeah
love.
yeah like
This is the way it is.
so a lot of my competitors are very good at making a lot more money than I do, but I think I'm happier than they are, and I think I do more interesting work than they do. I think those two go hand in hand. Everything we do is a one-off, and one thing that made the poor retirement consultant tear out their hair is that we don't have a design template or a stylistic template. So if you join my firm, we don't give you a shingle style house that we designed 15 years ago and maybe a modern house we designed 10 years ago and said, you're either doing this one or you're doing that one. Have fun. And if people do that well, it's easy for them to become a partner. They can go out and get more clients, and they're simply following the same old, same old. It's not that way with us at all. Every client is a fresh canvas, a new set of opportunities. Is it going to be a low budget greenhouse? Is it going to be a house where too much is never enough, or somewhere in between? We look at the circumstances and the opportunities, and also the sense of adventure that they're going to provide for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure architecture is one of those professions where there's a lot of adventure potentially. Well, tell me, when you look at the money versus design conversation, why not prioritize both?
That's a really good question, and I'll say from a philosophical standpoint, the more fun you have in your life, the less you're going to get paid, and unless you're very, very lucky, but or you're very, very successful. The key to monetizing what we're at my end of the profession, it's extraordinarily competitive, and so there are those that have national renown. They're part of this 100 best or 200 best, and they have marketing. I mean, they're firmly established in the firmament of architects, and they can charge within reason what they want. And the problem is we're competing with them, but we don't have any of the other. We lost a project to someone who we were working on it together. It was an interior designer, and they took over the entire project after getting our clients' 3 kids front row seats to a Rolling Stones concert. We just don't do that. I mean, it's crazy. But if we get good enough and enough people think if we're getting a lot of work and we can, we raise our prices. We've been raising our prices all along. But it's to get more than 15% on a project as a residential architect is rare. And people will say, well, we get more, but they're typically not being utterly truthful unless you're one of the people where you can get more because the guy wants to the entity wants to hire you no matter what. And that we're not there yet. I mean, and part of me is glad I'm not there yet. I don't. I'm pretty happy being a bit of a modest mouse, and another architect. I've been lucky. I've been mentored by a bunch of really great, very well-known architects over the years. They said, hogs get fed and pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered, and that is all the people I know in my profession who have put profitability at the fore. They fall into two categories: people that are doing the same thing over and over again, so they have a really great brand, and people are attracted to the brand, and that makes them very successful. Or they're completely focused on the business aspect, making sure that every contract is initialed and signed, and as soon as there's an excuse for an additional service, they're setting a bill for that. And I've noticed that the second group, if you look at their year-end statement, what percentage of their invoices went unpaid? It's more than 10%, because it becomes a game between them and the clients as to who's going to screw who the most. And architects we're supposed to be, there's a lot of romance about what architects are. I don't wear a bow tie. I've never worn a bow tie. I don't think architects are better than builders. I think builders are typically better than architects. But we're all on the same team. And, my attitude is I want to have fun. I want to make money, and I want to enjoy the people that I work with. And you can put that in any order that you like. And it's hard enough to reconcile that with another three things, which are existential. You have to get the work, you have to do the work, and then you have to get paid for the work. So how do you balance those six things? And I don't think I'm a poster child for how to make a lot of money in this profession, but I think I'm a poster child for how to survive it and do some really cool stuff along the way.
Okay, thanks. And so just to dig into that a little bit deeper, when you say you prioritize design over money, what does that mean in your world? And tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so prioritizing design over money means that you work on a design until you're happy with it, and then you sell it to the client. And sometimes you put so much time into developing the idea or elevating it, you realize that you can't charge for all the time you put in. That's probably the best way of doing it. The key to making money, if you do that, is you have to prioritize thinking over design visualization. And my secret is I'm very fast. I can draw. Drawing is the reason why Trimble brought me in to speak in their convention in Las Vegas. Was I was talking about how fast your hand is in comparison to tapping commands out on a keyboard or using a mouse. And the other thing is that when you're drawing, you're a samurai with a katana, and when you're at a keyboard, you're a clerk at a keyboard, and there's that brings in the entire nonverbal side of the equation. When you make a sweep across a roll of tracing paper in front of a client, they get really excited by that. So that guy's passionate and he can draw, so those things help mitigate the impact of that. But the other thing is turning down or walking away from projects where the client's going to pay you a lot of money, but they're going to make your life utterly miserable in the process. And so we don't ask our clients this because it would be kind of rude, but we ask ourselves about the people that we interact with. Does this person have the capacity for happiness? A lot of people don't. a lot of very wealthy people don't. And one reason why they're wealthy is they're trying to make up for the fact that they can't be happy. That might doom my office for the next 15 years. But the thing is that when you work for people that have the capacity to be happy, that means they can be pleased. That means you have the opportunity to please them. And pleased people are happy people. Pleased people pay their bills on time, and they recommend you to their friends so you get more work. It all sort of balances out, but that's key. I got roped into a 4-year relationship with, it was just like sheer masochism on my part. And the day I walked away from that project was, why did I subject myself to that? Well, because we needed the money. And, part of the downside of this profession is if you have good people working for you, you don't turn, one of the things that comes up against the capacity for happiness comes up against the happiness of your employees and their livelihood. That you don't, if I can do a good job for a bad person and keep good people employed, that's a road I have to travel whether I want to or not. I'm sure a lot of people, can identify with that situation.
Oh, absolutely. It speaks to a lot of the challenges in the industry, which is the cyclical nature of it, the demand or lack thereof, choosing whether to keep employees, like you said, engage gainfully, choosing the line about design. How much do we want to spend of our time getting this design to the next level when the client might not even appreciate it, or maybe they will? So, Marcus, what would you like to talk to our audience about? What would you like to share in terms of lessons learned? You mentioned you're 68 years old now.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found impressive interacting with you is your thirst for new knowledge, that you're not resting on your laurels. Not only can you sketch, obviously, very, very well, like second nature and very quickly, as you mentioned, traditional skill, but also you've been playing around. You're on the cutting edge of AI, just soaking up as much information as you can to stay abreast of that.
Well, the AI is still got a long way to go before it has like a profound impact on our lives. But it's coming, and whether it's in 3 years or 15 years, probably closer somewhere in there. There are a lot of developments, and the thing is, AI right now is simply machine learning. It's a smart machine. It's not an independently thinking machine, and a lot of people get confused. It's like, what's AI? Are computers thinking for themselves? I mean, what am I missing out on? And if you read all the articles, you'll see that in a nutshell, there's nothing there other than a lot of people trying to figure it out. There's a lot of hype about it. The more hype helps brings investors in and everything else. But the key is that there are tools that are being developed that are helping us communicate really effectively with each other and get our points of view across. And one of the AI is, I'll use the term AI is really great for helping people sell product. And what I mean by that, if I design a really cool building for a developer and the developer wants to go sell it to a company so they can lease them $500,000 worth of office space, AI is doing a really good job of like showing what that building is like in the wintertime, in the summertime, with a lot of people, with in the fall with animation with snowstorm or leaves going by. But it's not good at generating ideas. And one of the things I talk about it's important in this discussion is that AI is focused on rendering. Renderings are design visualizations that are used to sell a finished product, like a house or a car or a building or a toaster. And that level of reality, of realism, is of no help to a designing architect, because when you're designing something, the more unformed your idea is, the more abstract your design visualization should be. And by being abstract, they invite the client into the interaction of imagining what it could be. We actually got fired from a project because I decided I'm going to try this out. I went to a meeting. It was our first design meeting, and I went in with photorealistic renderings of the inside and the outside of this house. And it took me no time at all to do it. I basically did, a quick SketchUp model, imported some realistic looking stuff, did a quick AI overlay in terms of lighting and, outside landscape stuff. And it was a very frustrating series of meetings after that because all he could talk about was, I don't like the color of this. Why did you pick that chair? Why did you spend time picking out a chair I don't like? And it went completely sideways, and it went sideways so fast, there's no way I could recover. And, but I think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
So, but we have done something that's really kind of fun. I love using Midjourney Blend. Midjourney is a AI that's available on Discord. And basically, you can take any 5 images that you like, and Midjourney will put them together. So if you like really famous architects, I started out by taking a Kundig house, a Cutler house, a Peter Boland house, and a couple of others. And it came out with a house that you would probably see presented to you when you're at the next CRAN conference in Alexandria, Virginia. That was kind of cool. So then next thing I did was I took some of my houses. This sounds really sick, and combined them with houses by my betters. And that was kind of cool, but, I felt kind of stupid doing this, and the results were kind of silly as well. But then I did something even more interesting. I started taking my old stuff, combining it with my new stuff. And that was interesting because the computer said, we ever thought about, the thing is that when you do that, the computer's coming back and saying to you, have you thought about doing it this way? And it's looking at things in a non-human way, and you're seeing it's acting as a catalyst for new ideas that you never would have come up with by yourself. So that was kind of interesting, but it wasn't quite there. So the magic ingredient was to I'm on Pinterest, and if I have like 25,000 tens of thousands of images on Pinterest, but my favorite board is a board called Miscellaneous Art. And whenever I see a piece of sculpture, I started off as a sculptor. I went to art school. I swore I'd never become an architect. John Hayek of Cooper Union offered me a position in the architecture school, and I told him, hell no, I'm going to go out and fight the good fight. Columbia was very happy to accept my tuition a couple of years later, which luckily finally paid off. But what I do is I take 2 images of stuff I've done, and it could be a SketchUp model, and I combine it with a sculpture by Tony Smith, who was one of my teachers in school, or a sculpture by Giacometti or Michelangelo or Anthony Caro or Henry Moore. And that stuff is really cool. And it's we do it now when we're designing furniture. We'll put a SketchUp model together, and then we'll go out and we'll look at some really cool sculpture. And the stuff of Richard Serra or David Smith or any of those, heroes from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, you end up with some provocative things that you then have to go and make your own. Here's another crazy analogy. For those that, it's not Top Chef, it's the show where 4 people compete, and they have a mystery basket. It's like going to Midjourney is like opening up a mystery basket of weird ingredients. Oh, I've got Rocky Mountain oysters. What am I going to do with this? Throw them away. Oh, here's some caviar. I think I'll combine that with this. So those are some of the ways that we are playing with it. But the other thing that we're trying to do is build our own large language model to train an AI element to only look at the things that we want it to see. So, and that's important because architectural ideas come from our visual memory. I mean, our visual knowledge and our memory. And it's all sort of mixed up between what's in your head that you're conscious of, but also what's stirring around in your subconscious. And a link to your subconscious, which people don't understand, is your hand. If you draw stuff with your hand, stuff's going to bubble up from your unconscious and say, hey, why don't you try this idea? Isn't it really cool? If you're at a keyboard, the chances of that happening go down substantially. But if you're doing that, playing with a blend thing, that kind of helps. But in the end, you're basically asking a computer to act as your cultural, historical, personal, visual memory. That's where your stuff comes from. That's where ideas come from. Oh, this reminds me of that thing I saw when I was a student studying architecture in Rome, 45 years ago. Or, wow, you can make connections because what I tell people, when people ask me what does it mean to be a designer? And I say, well, designer is someone that looks at a situation and figures out all the problems that have to be solved. But more importantly, he figures out in what order and in what priority the problems are solved. So the biggest problems get solved first and the minor problems get solved last. That's key. A lot of architects don't understand that. That's why they don't get to be designers. They get to be project managers and draftspeople. And the second part of it is design is about creating relationships between anything and everything. So it could be between a visual memory of mine and a visual memory of yours, or it could be a common source, like perhaps we both like Paul Rudolph. So if I design a building that looks like Paul Rudolph, you're going to like it because you already like Paul Rudolph. And that's where AI gets a little bit murky. And then add into that the fact that 90% of human communication is nonverbal, and 100% of computer communication is verbal, or numerical. So, but it's making sense of all that. Keeps me vital. But the other thing I'll say about you have to have fun. If you're working really, really hard, the adage that, I work hard, but I play hard too, always live by that. That doesn't mean drinking hard, because that brings up its own set of problems. But, I have been a competitive sailor. I've been a competitive race car driver. I've been a rock climber. I've been a mountaineer. I used to be able to jump a 3-foot log on a horse without falling off. I love hiking. I love being out in the woods. And I walk my dog for an hour every morning in the woods behind my house, no matter what the weather. It was snowing today. We were kind of miserable. But I get all my best design ideas when I'm walking my dog. I come back. I can't wait to sit, hit the desk and start drawing. And it keeps you fresh. That's the key.
Mm. What advice would you give to architects who are younger in their career now, based upon what you've experienced? And you gave us some advice already. Do what you love. Make sure you're having fun when you're doing it.
Yeah.
What else?
You have to develop skill. You have to have craft. From skill comes speed. From skill comes people understanding that you're reliable and you can get things done. And you have to develop skill, develop your imagination.
And what have you found to be useful for doing that, for developing skill and developing imagination?
Well, the way to not develop your imagination is to play a lot of video games. And I love playing video games. I've gone through a whole bunch of them from start to finish. I became an amateur race car driver in reality by spending 10 years driving race cars on a computer. And once you do the real thing, you're never going back. But developing the imagination is doing things that require your imagination to do some work. And I have I was brought up in Europe primarily till I was 10 years old, which meant that I was brought up without TV. And when I was in high school, we went back to my vacations were spent behind the Iron Curtain in what's now St. Petersburg. There was no TV. There was nothing there. The only thing I could do is either go to a museum, of which there are a lot of really good ones, like the Hermitage, or I could read. And looking at paintings, looking at sculpture, and also doing a lot of reading helped me develop a pretty active imagination. And I won't tell you how many times I've read Lord of the Rings, but that was a good deep dive for my imagination to have play a lot with. But if your idea of the Lord of the Rings come from watching the movies, my favorite toys growing up were Lego blocks, but they came as squares or rectangles that were either white or red. And they were all rectangles. There are no special pieces. If there were, and I remember watching my nephews going through building the Star Wars, the big Star Wars thing, they're going page by page. Oh, I have to find this piece and put it there. What is that doing other than making you a good future insurance company salesman? I mean, I don't get it.
If that can follow instructions really, really well.
Yes. Do what you're told.
So you talked about, so you had a health crisis a couple of years ago, and that sort of, it sounds like it changed the way you approached work. And tell me about your careers, the way you approached work before that and after, and lessons you've learned from avoiding burnout while still doing what you love.
Well, the way to avoid burnout is to realize that you're not invincible. When you're in your 20s or 30s, I started my own office when I was 40. So I spent 15 years, working in big firms saying, hey, it's Thirsty Thursday, or it's, let's, have happy hour in the office and go, get a couple of drinks. And, there's a lot of, sort of bro culture, or because back in those days, there were a lot fewer women in architecture than there are now. And they weren't very happy watching us gallivant either at that time. And I apologize for any role I might have played in that. But, back then, you're encouraged, I was brought up, encouraged to smoke as much as I could, to drink as much as I could, and work as hard as I possibly could at the same time. That was what my father did. That's what my grandfather did. That's what my uncles did. That's what my older siblings did.
Sounds like a great way to just put a lot of load on the body.
Yeah, but luckily for me, when I was not lucky, my poor mother, but my mother was diagnosed with substance abuse, and she opted to go into a 4-week recovery. A diplomat's wife, Washingtonian, social person. She was hanging out in New Hampshire with drug dealers that had been sent up there to avoid going to jail. And I remember seeing her for the first time, wondering if I was going to survive beating her friends. But I got exposure to Al-Anon for the first time, and probably the only time. And Al-Anon told me I'd been a bad boy. And I was, in their terms, I was like a severe substance abuser based on what they were doing. And I decided that's time for me to clean up. That was cleaning my act up, number one. Cleaning my act up, number two, was when I started my firm, I had to get life insurance. My insurance company refused to give me life insurance because for the last 6 months, I had been doing the 2 miles of walking that commuting required. And I'd basically put on 15 pounds and was drinking too much and everything else. And my doctor said, by the time you're 65, you'll be dead. And at that time, my daughter started taking karate. I decided, well, I'll take her to karate. That looks like fun. I'll put on a white set of pajamas and start doing the same thing. 8 years later, I had a black belt. I was weighed 20 pounds less, and I could actually run 5 miles. So that was good, and that kind of held me for a while. Then my bad habits sort of reemerged, and especially running an office, you always have to stay up. You have to do whatever has to be done. If there's a deadline, permit set has to go out. You got to go to a public hearing. So you put a lot of hours in. But as a result, 3 years ago, I had all my systems basically said, we've had enough. I had a stroke. I had severe inflammation that turned into arthritis throughout my entire body. And the only way I could, cope with this was, part of it was surgery, and luckily I had a type of stroke that is treatable with cardiac cath lab procedures. So I'm stroke free, and I have no medical restrictions on me whatsoever. But part of that is due to the fact that I exercise. You have to stay in shape. Getting old is a skill. You have to stay healthy. You got to stay. I do yoga every day. I mean, not very, 15 minutes of yoga is about as much as I can stand, but you have to do all those things to keep your mind fresh. And if I'm 3 weeks ago I was in Zion National Park hiking by myself, and after the trip to Seattle, I went up to 8,000 feet on Mount Rainier by myself at twilight, and on my way down, I wasn't thinking about my heart rate or the fact I'd had a stroke 3 years ago. I was thinking about, were there any bears around? So that was a rather frightening one. But that, it's that kind of, try and find a balance, no matter how wildly the pendulum is swinging. Is that you figure out where your center is and find your way back to it when you need to. Because if you maintain a sense of invincibility, life is going to catch up. But I had my last wake up call was this summer, where I had built a really fast race car based on a 2016 Mustang GT, and I've had accidents driving before, but it was like, I'm fine. And my race car hit a patch of oil that had been dropped by the car in front of it and spun me into a concrete wall. And this was the first crash where I experienced intense pain. And it resulted in my left eye retina starting to detach and a concussion. And as an architect, you need your brain and you need your eyes. It's like, that was the last time I haven't gotten into a car since that diagnosis. And it's, you have to adjust.
How, just out of curiosity, how do they treat a retina that's detaching? Is there anything they can do?
I was lucky. It was in the process of detaching, and it was right before the trip to Seattle. So I was able to get it worked on, and they cleared me to get on an airplane. But if your retina is fully detached, what they do, they have to press the retina against the eyeball to get it to attach to the eyeball. And the way they do that is by putting in a little bubble of gas. It's like a balloon, and it presses the eye back in place. But it means you're immobile for 2 weeks. It's a very nasty thing. And once that happens, it happens again. So I know a guy who's, every 3 years, he's, lying face down, for 2 weeks. So I don't want to go there, but I'm lucky. We're all, if you're happy, you're lucky. And one way to stay happy is to remember how lucky you are.
That's a good solid advice. Marcus, in terms of winning commissions, winning projects, if you could sit down with yourself 15 years ago and give yourself some tips or tricks for landing the right commissions, anything you'd share?
I would, yes, I would share that the fact that I wish I had done a better job of vetting my clients, not in terms of, are they, working for the Soviets or are they working for the mafia? But, it's not that. It's more, can you make them happy? Can you, I believe in hard work and fair play, and nothing makes me angrier than being bullied or feeling like someone is dealing with me unfairly. And I get angry. I get angry at my clients when I think they're pulling a fast one on me, and they don't like it. And that makes it more difficult because they're in a position where they don't have to take anything from anybody, so they can give out what they want, and you either take it or you don't. And part of it, is learning how to convey your contempt for their behavior at a level that prevents them from kicking you out the door and not paying your last invoice. That is very stressful, but those are the sort of things you have to deal with when you're running a company and people rely, you have people that rely on you for their livelihoods. It's like there's no trust fund behind me or any. I mean, the money I make doing what I do is what I live on and what I'm going to retire on. And so there's a lot of hard reality that has to be baked into the cake, and that's why pretending you're being chased by bears on Mount Rainier, back in October, was a really great experience. Walked into the lodge, there was a fire going. I got a drink. I sat by the fire and really enjoyed the fact I'd been doing something incredibly stupid for the last couple of hours. But that made me happy. But that the key is, like, you don't have to take every job, and the job that you take that wears you down might be at the expense of a job that would have uplifted you. So nothing worse than working. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of warning signs would you give to your younger self to help recognize when you should disqualify a client?
If one way is that they're talking down to you. We do not live in a feudal society, and the only way in residential architecture, you're a combination of, you're primarily a therapist. You're a marriage therapist. You're providing, you're guiding them through a mental process that's extraordinarily difficult. And it takes a lot of time to convince a client. They have to build trust, and they have to believe in you. And you have to think of how to convey authenticity and authority and talent and vision. It takes time for that. That's when I go back to skill, but we've been, I said I've been lucky. We've had great clients, and we have clients that we've been working for 30 years. They're, from the beginning of our firm, and hold on to no matter, if you have a good experience with a client, write them Christmas cards, send them a bottle of wine, keep in touch with them,
get them
make
tickets to the front seat of the Rolling Stones concert.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could do that too. Well, the guy in question, he paid a $10,000 fee to a PR company that had relationships. So and based on that, he could get anything. He could get a hotel reservation, a dinner reservation, or a concert ticket. But it cost him $10,000, and that was 20 years ago. Imagine what that costs today. And I want to go see Bruce Springsteen. How much is that? And he's playing tomorrow. How much is that ticket going to cost me? But but those are take care of the people that care about you, and good clients care about you, and you've designed a nice house for them. You're part of their family. I mean, distant part, but they're. I say this a lot, but if you're good at what you do, you'll be taken for face value by the most famous and most powerful people, or the richest people in the world, that value talent, authenticity, fairness, and hard work. And they're surrounded by enough people that have none of those qualities, that when they see it, they're very happy. And those are the people you want to work for. Imagine I talk about something I call the Medici bubble. Imagine Leonardo da Vinci crossing the Piazza di Signorella in Florence to go see Lorenzo the Magnificent, to talk about something. I'm making this up, but they might have missed each other by 50 years. And on his way in, Raphael is walking out, and he's shaking his head, and he said, "Man, Leo's in a bad mood today. Da Vinci, be careful." And while you're walking across the courtyard, some poor schmuck was being hung, drawn, and quartered, because that's where they did that stuff on a daily basis back then. And Leonardo walks into Lorenzo the Magnificent's study, and he pulls out a really cool drawing, and Lorenzo says, "Man, that's just what I want. Here's $1 billion ducats. Go out and build it." I mean, that is kind of like you're dealing with someone really powerful who can snuff you out, and if you draw something really cool, they will build it. That's the ideal. The reality is, I don't like it. It's over budget. Why do you charge so much? Can you cut your fee? Can you figure out how to value engineer this? I mean, one thing is get really good at value engineering.
Yeah. What would you say so let's say again, you're speaking to your younger self, or maybe a younger architect, and they get the wisdom of that advice to qualify and vet your clients, but they say, well, you know what? I mean, I'm worried that I won't get another project. I kind of need the money right now.
You have to, this is the hardest thing to do. You have to walk away from certainty and security and do the best on the gateway project that you're given, and do everything, no matter what, to make that project a success for you. That project happened to me in 1996. A guy drove by a house I'd done on a moonlight basis. He stopped and asked the owner who the architect was. They called me up. They were about to hire a top Boston architect, and they hired me instead. And this is in 1996. I was making $160,000 a year in a large office downtown. I was their key designer. We started at 5 people. When I left, there were almost 150. And my future was assured as a senior project manager, junior partner, whatever, for the rest of my life. Although I probably would have gained another 50 pounds, never got a black belt in karate, never coached soccer, and probably got divorced along the way. But the key is that you have to just get through all that stuff and move on. But so to make a long story short, my income for the next year was not 160,000; it was 65,000. And the year after that, it was 125,000. And then the dot-com bubble, came in, and we were, for the next 20 years, we were 12 people. And so it just exploded. I mean, part of it is timing, and being in the right place at the right time. But because we did those houses, there were people, the newly minted bubble, tech bubble guys, were calling us. At one point we had 8 $4 million houses in the office at the same time. We called them the 8 Sisters. And believe me, we were working 80 hours a week back then. But were they the right jobs? No. If I was going to do it all over again, I would have stayed at 6 and turned half those projects away. That's probably the most important thing. The biggest mistake I made was go too big, too quickly, and do a lot of crappy work as a result. So
why do you say that you would have turned those projects away? Or what if you had to do differently? Why would you do it differently?
I was doing what was marketable and I knew would be successful, what was safe and easy, rather than what was difficult and stressful. Making the transition from being a very good shingle style architect, and the house I did in 96 was one of the first, along with work by Tom Catalano and Sharpie Wharton. We both started with the 3 different firms, started doing shingle style architecture sort of independently, simultaneously, and shingle style seemed to be a great way of introducing modernism to a traditional building form. and it got me a lot of work. But I went to California for the first time, despite being a world traveler. I'd never been to California. And I came back and looked at my wife, Judy, and said, how many frigging shingle-style houses do I have to do before I retire? And the answer was not that many. And then we made the transition to modern architecture, which is kind of scary because for every architect that wants a neo-Georgian or a neo-shingle style, and for every modern architect, there are like 15 people that do the other stuff because that's what everybody wants. I mean, look at the shelter magazines in your town. It's all shingle style. I mean, it's all traditional stuff. But
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, you've given us a lot of insight here. If you had to summarize, just kind of repeat again, just to kind of summarize your advice based upon what you know here as we wrap up this interview, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say be aware. Be aware of the circumstances that are affecting your career. Be aware of the circumstances that are affecting your family life. The other thing that if you like to do residential architecture, you have to have a lot of empathy for everybody. The client, your family, the people that haul plywood on your jobs, all that. This job is all about understanding people, everyone that's involved. And if you could get everyone to love what they're doing and be happy about it. And I'm a project leader. So if I walk in the studio and I'm happy, or I walk onto a job site and I'm happy, it makes everybody happy. And if I'm in a bad mood, that's 10 times worse. So, you have a lot of, this is a conversation about how to be as happy as you can under trying circumstances. And the happier you are, the luckier I think you'll be in terms of getting the kind of work that you want. Because happiness draws people.
That's a great place to end the episode today.
Oh, that was fun,
Marcus. Yeah, appreciate your time, and it's been great connecting.
Yeah, you too.
And that's a wrap. Hey, Enoch Sears here, and I have a request. Since you are a listener here of the Business of Architecture podcast, Ryan and I, we love putting this podcast together. We love sharing information as much as we can glean from all the other industries that we're a part of to bring it back to empower you as an architect and a designer. And one thing that helps us in our mission is the growth of this podcast, simply because it helps other architects stand for more of their value, spreads the business information that we're sharing to empower architects together so architects, designers, engineers can really step into their greatness, whatever that looks like for each individual. And so here my simple ask is for you to join us and be part of our community by doing the following: heading over to iTunes and leaving a review of the podcast. And as an expression of our sincere thanks, we would like to give you a free CEU course that can get you one professional development unit, but more importantly, will give you a very solid and firm foundation on your journey to becoming a profitable and thriving architect. So here's the process for that. After you leave us a review, send an email to support@businessofarchitecture.com. Let us know the username that you use to leave the review, and we will send you that free training. On the training, you'll discover what 99% of architecture firm owners wish they would have known 20 years ago. And now a word from today's sponsor. A while ago, I began to hear reports of a company that was helping some of our clients build remote teams. We looked into it more closely and discovered the company World Teams that was helping small architectural practitioners build remote teams that were both capable and qualified. I was intrigued by another business that addressing one of the critical pain points for small architectural practices, which is the ability to grow and shrink a team effectively, to be able to handle higher workflow without having to staff up significantly, and also being very sensitive about labor costs. World Teams is built to address these issues. World Teams is a small but mighty company that helps architectural practices build high-performing remote teams quickly and efficiently, saving you the headache of sorting resumes and interviewing underqualified candidates. World Teams operates in your time zone and prioritizes near native English speakers, ensuring clear and efficient communication with your remote team members. They have flexible contracts so you can adjust your team size as your needs evolve. Additionally, you're connected directly with your skilled professionals, which fosters trust and collaboration. And World Teams helps you reduce your operating costs without compromising the quality that is so important to a practice. To download a free guide for building a remote team for a small architectural practice, go to businessafarchitecture.com/world teams. That's one word, businessafarchitecture.com/world teams. As a reminder, sponsorship is not an endorsement, and you must do your own due diligence before entering into any business relationship. Go to businessafarchitecture.com/world teams. The views expressed on the show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment, except to help you conquer the world. Carpe diem.